Welcome back to Bit by Bit, everyone. Today I'm talking to Bitcoin Q&A. We talk about dogs, we have some audio issues, and then finally we get on to wallets. We talk about why it's important to have your own, how to best secure them, and the different types of wallets out there. I really enjoyed chatting to Bitcoin Q&A. He's got some of the best content out there. He has an amazing website, and I'm really looking forward to collaborating with him in the future. After recording this episode, I reached straight back out to him and said, look, come on, we've got to do this again. Not only do we need to do wallets, we need to do nodes. That is actually going to be recorded in the next couple of days, which I'm really excited for. And I think I'm going to be releasing one a week for the next few weeks, and we're going to all help improve our privacy, which is so important, and it can be hard at times. So with the help of Bitcoin Q&A, we're going to talk through all the different ways that you can help improve your privacy and security with Bitcoin. As I said, today we're talking about wallets, but we are going to do a few others, and all of these different technologies put together in the right way can help make you self-sovereign and secure. I really hope you enjoy, and this is as much a learning experience for me as it is for all of you, and I'm really hoping that this is going to help and that all of us are going to improve our privacy together. Enjoy. Testing.
I can hear you now. Any joy?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Got you at last.
That was so weird.
I think it was me, to be honest with you. I think I've got my AirPods connected to my Mac laptop, which is connected to my screen in my office. But I think if I have the lid closed, because I've got it connected to a screen, the headphones don't work. I think that's where I got to.
Well, that makes a change, because it's usually me who fucks up the audio, so that's nice for a change.
I just need to find a way to turn you up a little bit, because it's a bit quiet. How long have you had the pup?
We've had him for must be about Jesus. It was just on lockdown. It was end of March we got him, right at the end of March.
Cool.
Yeah, he's great, but he's a pain in the ass as well.
They're hard work, aren't they?
Yeah, just a little bit. And what about yours?
She is just over 10 weeks old. So we've only had her for just over 2. Obviously, you can't take them away from their parents, can you, until they're 8 weeks. So
that's it.
Still pretty new to the household.
And then I'm trying to remember how long it was after that you can then have their jabs and they can go out.
Yeah, well, she's had one set.
Yeah.
So you've got to wait 4 weeks, and then you can have the second set, and then you've got to wait another week, and then all systems go.
Okay. Yeah, she'll be raring to go. They have so much energy.
Yeah. I don't know about her, but I'm certainly raring to get her out there and tire her out.
Yeah. It's hard. Have you had all the crying during the night and everything?
Do you know what? She's not been too bad. First couple of nights, we're keeping her in a crate at the bottom of the stairs. So the first couple of nights she was crying a little bit, but she's good as gold now. You sort of try and tire her out and about an hour before bedtime, and then she's pretty good. There's the odd whimper, but then she gets the message that it's dark, I need to go to sleep.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, we had major issues for the first sort of, I don't know, it must have been about a week or 10 days. He was just crying every half an hour. I was having to sort of get up and make sure he was all right. But we had him downstairs, so I won't have dogs upstairs. And and I was, I got to the point I was like, Jesus, have I made the wrong decision here? This is a nightmare. and then just one night we went to bed, and then he was silent, and he's never woken us ever again since. Not a single yip, nothing. Awesome. So I think he was just missing his mum.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
All right. Well, listen, I can talk dogs all day, but the listeners aren't really going to be here for that. So let's jump in and do first of all an introduction for anyone who doesn't know you or hasn't seen your work. Bitcoin Q&A. Can you do an introduction, please?
Yeah, so I am Bitcoin Q&A on Twitter. Obviously, that's a pseudonym to maintain what little amount of privacy the government allows us to have at the moment. Yeah, I'm just your typical Twitter pleb, basically. I try and educate people where I can. I've obviously put together bitcoinqa.com, aimed very much at breaking people in gently. Obviously, I'm sure we'll get into the weeds of that later on. But I just try and sort of help people where I can, and it wasn't all that long ago that I was entering the space, super confused, not knowing which way to turn and who to look to for advice and understand all of the facets that Bitcoin pulls you down. I just try and help people where I can, basically.
Okay, well, I think you're being very humble there because I've looked through your website and I've only come across it recently, to be honest. But I've looked through, and honestly, it's one of the best resources I have found to break things down in a simple way that anyone can just jump on here. And because it's broken down by category, it's just easy to dive in and everything's sort of bite size, which I really like. So for anyone who's listening and hasn't already checked it out, jump on now and have a look. It's just really nice. And that's why I reached out to you, because I thought what would be really nice is to go into maybe one specific topic and dig a little bit deeper so that someone who's coming in and isn't really used to this space, or they've just heard about Bitcoin, or they've just bought their first Bitcoin, or maybe they're thinking about doing it, that we can go through and maybe talk about wallets would be a good one. And I
Yeah.
thought no one better than you to talk about this stuff. So before we do that, can you just tell me, obviously, I've looked through the website and this is clearly something you care deeply about, and privacy seems to be very, very important to you. What was it that has led you down this path? How did you find Bitcoin, and why so much on the privacy side?
Okay, so I mean, the privacy thing has been relatively recent, a recent rabbit hole that I've sort of fell into. In terms of how did I discover Bitcoin first and foremost, I was obviously unfortunately still got a fiat job. So I was sat in the office, and one of the guys who I share an office with was playing on his phone, and he looked really into it. So I said, what are you up to there? And he said, oh, I'm mining Monero. And bear in mind,
Right.
at this point, I've never even heard of cryptocurrency. I don't know what it is. I've heard of Bitcoin, but never paid any attention. This was sort of peak bull run. This is just before Bitcoin hit $20,000 in late 2017. So I said to him, I said, you're doing what with who on what, and basically he didn't fully grasp it himself. He was sort of it's free money, and so that obviously I came into the space very much sort of for number go up, like most people do. I don't try and hide it or anything like that. So that kind of I suppose the easy money aspect made me look a little deeper. Obviously, didn't spend too much time dwelling on mining on my phone or anything like that, but I started just watching YouTube videos. Unfortunately fell down the shitcoin rabbit hole a little bit, became a big fan of Litecoin. Started,
Ugh.
yeah. So
Me too, by the way. So don't feel too bad about that. I did as well at the start, but now I look back and I just think, fuck.
yeah. How much time did I waste watching those YouTube videos? Anyway, so yeah, I spent a lot of time listening to some terrible crypto podcasts. But there was some nuggets of information I picked up there that they were still talking about Bitcoin, albeit it wasn't sort of flavour of the month back then. It was alt season, so to speak. And then I stumbled across some Andreas videos, and then that sort of led me down some more rabbit holes of some more sort of serious content, a bit more focused towards Bitcoin. I suppose what properly red pilled me was at that time as well. I just got a new fiat job that involved a hell of a lot of driving up and down the UK. So obviously I had a lot of time on my hands behind the wheel. Discovered
Perfect.
Discovered all the the mainstream podcasts, so Tales from the Crypt, Stefan Lavera, etc. And I literally, that was the tipping point for me. Was just I was stuck behind the wheel for hours and hours and hours driving up and down the country, just sort of soaking up as much of this information that these guys were spewing out as I could. That was obviously sort of early 2018, which is when I kind of flipped into full sort of maxi mode, so to speak. And it's been a relentless quest for knowledge ever since, really. Obviously, got stuck into Telegram groups all over Twitter, and just adding to my podcast repertoire. Yours obviously being one of them as well, which is it's every day. I'm learning something new, and I love it. So
it's the perfect space in the car when you're driving to get through podcasts. There is no better place for it.
No, it got to the point where I was looking for longer ways home so I could finish the next Stefan Lavera pod or whatever. So fully fledgling, recovering shitcoiner, hold my hands up. But again, referring to the guys from Tale from the Crypt, Matt says as well, is that everybody's got to touch the stove once, haven't they? And,
exactly.
That was a rough recap on my rabbit hole story.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that everyone who finally becomes maximalist, although I don't particularly like the term, it's more just they use reason. They all sort of we all have the same way in. It's always, you watch those shitty YouTube videos with the Lambo boys and all the bullshit, and we all think that, and then we all think we can trade and think that we're going to make loads of money because we can beat the market because we're smarter than everyone else, and then we realize we're not, and then we finally find like the decent content on YouTube, which pretty much at the time, it sounds like you were in, and me as well, was Andreas Antonopoulos. And then you obsessively watch all of that content and then go, oh shit, this is bigger than just making money. And then you finally find Bitcoin Twitter and the other podcasts, and then you go, okay, this is the obvious thing. That's the only thing that works. It's so weird that we all have to go through that same the same pain basically to get to a point of just going, okay, yeah, Bitcoin's the thing that matters.
Yeah, absolutely right. Like I say, I feel like it's become the de facto way in for most people, really, isn't it?
Yeah, like you say, you have to touch a stove.
And sorry, go.
No, you go.
I forgot what I was going to say now. It's gone.
Good.
It was shitcoin related anyway, so let's move on.
Let's move on from that. So the idea, obviously we've spoken before, but the idea behind this podcast is to try and help people avoid the sort of problems that we had to go through, avoid the shitcoining, and try and do things as safely and privately as possible. So obviously, it would be nice for people to understand. Probably one of the most useful things to start with is to have a wallet, understand what it is, understand how to use it, and so that they can hold their own keys and that they don't have money on an exchange. So I think probably the best thing to do would be if I just ask you some questions as I would have when I first entered the space, and maybe we can go through bit by bit until somebody who's listening and they might be new to it can understand what they should do and how to do it safely. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. Sounds good. Yeah, like I say, just to add one more thing before you get cracking on that is one thing you'll notice from the content that I put out on the site and stuff, it's very much geared towards the things that people sort of touch and directly interact with when they're interacting with the Bitcoin network. Obviously there's loads of great content out there about what is sound money and Bitcoin fixes this, etc., etc. And I think that all of that stuff's great. But what shapes Bitcoin for me and what shapes how I feel about it is the way I interact with it. So it's, again, like you say, wallets, nodes, different applications, because ultimately that is what you're seeing, feeling, and touching. So yeah, that's why I try and keep my content sort of focused on that sort of stuff. Just to, I look at it as practical advice.
Well, yeah, because everything else is theory, isn't it? I mean, it's all fascinating, and it's amazing talking about this hyper Bitcoinization world and all the reasons why Bitcoin is better than the traditional financial system. But until you really start using it, it's hard to grasp. And it's hard to grasp quite how amazing this system is. So that's what I really liked with the website, is that, like you say, it's what you can actually do with it today. And this just makes it so much more simple. I wish I'd have come across a website like this when I first got in. It really, really is helpful.
Yeah, there's quite a few out there now. But the problem is finding it in the sea of information that is Bitcoin, Twitter, and the internet in general. So hopefully, if I keep shilling it hard enough newbies will find it and it'll help them.
Definitely. Well, I'm shilling it to everybody that I know, because I really do think it's brilliant. And obviously now we're going to get into, this is, I'm hoping, going to be the episode I can point people to if they ask me, how do I hold my own keys? What is this wallet thing? What am I doing? I'll say, right, go on to this. And I'm hoping that we can make it as simple as possible. So tell me, what is a wallet? I've just bought my Bitcoin and I'm holding it on an exchange, and someone said to me, not your keys, not your coins, and that apparently I've got to use this wallet thing. What is that?
Okay, so whoever told you that, first and foremost, gave you great advice, so you should listen to them.
Okay.
So just to recap, if you've got your Bitcoin stored on an exchange, essentially it's not your Bitcoin. So what does that mean in practicality? So Bitcoins are controlled and spent by private keys, and essentially what a wallet is a collection of private keys that give you access to spend the Bitcoin that's held within. So to expand on that a little bit more, so a wallet can take many shapes. The most common of which that most people will start with will be a mobile wallet. So essentially, it's an application on your phone that is able to connect to the Bitcoin network. So it will, in your example, it will allow you to receive Bitcoin, to send Bitcoin, and to just store it for as long as you need, basically. So when you open a wallet, the wallet will generate what's known as a set of, as a seed phrase. Essentially, what your seed phrase is a master password, essentially. Anyone with this seed phrase basically has access to all of the Bitcoin that's stored within that wallet. So the seed phrase takes the shape of 12 or 24 words. They're human readable words. So also one key thing to remember for anybody listening to this that is creating a wallet for the first time, is the wallet will warn you, make sure you write these seed words down. They are essentially the password to all of your Bitcoin. So it's worth remembering that's not a warning to just hit yes to and then forget about. If you were to not write these words down and to lose your phone, essentially you've lost your Bitcoin as well.
Okay. Just to break that down slightly, is what we're saying is you're downloading an application. This is if it's on a phone wallet. So say it's a small amount of Bitcoin. Someone's just bought £50 worth. Okay. And so we've said to them, right, you download this application, and that would be like downloading any other application on their phone, and then they press that application, they open it up, and you're saying, the first thing it will say is, right, we're going to give you these 12 to 24 words, and then they need to write those down, and that's kind of like a master backup in case they lose their phone or it dies or something happens. And what happens if they don't do that? What happens if they listen to this and go, you two are talking shit, I can't be bothered with that? What happens if they then lose their phone or it goes down the toilet?
Well, essentially, you lose your Bitcoin.
Okay.
So, like I say, these are the master keys, the master password, whatever you like to call it, to your Bitcoin.
Right.
So write them down, guard them with your life. Most wallets these days also, you'll get that initial warning when you first open the application to say, these are your seed words, write them down. Most wallets as well will allow you to go into the settings, into the menu within the application to view these words again. I would urge people not to rely on that, because that is not a de facto standard.
Mm-hmm.
Not every wallet does it, but most of the good ones will do so. But please, if you take anything away from this, write those words down and guard them safely.
Okay, so they've done that. They've listened. They've written down their 12 to 24 words, and now what do they do?
Okay, so they've created their wallet. They will now, again, depends on the application, but they will now have a couple of screens or buttons that will say, one will generally say send and one will say receive.
Mm-hmm.
So if they hit the receive button, that will generate an address. And basically, what an address is basically somewhere to send your Bitcoin to. So again, going back to your example, they bought £50 worth of Bitcoin on CoinFloor, and they want to withdraw that to their own wallet.
Good choice.
Yeah. Hashtag sponsor of the pod. So then they can open up Coinbase on their laptop or wherever, whichever application they're using.
Yeah.
And within that, they'll have the option to send to an external wallet. So when they go onto CoinFloor and they press send, that exchange will ask for a receive address.
Mm-hmm.
So what you need to do basically is copy and paste the receive address from the mobile wallet that you just generated. The address will look like a string of letters and numbers. So basically, that is the address where you would want to withdraw that Bitcoin
mm-hmm.
from the exchange into that address, which is controlled by the wallet that you've just created. Once they hit send, that will sort of be broadcast to the Bitcoin network. Magic happens, which again I'm sure we'll get into that later. And they should see, they will see it almost instantly pop up to say, oh, you've got £50 worth of Bitcoin on its way to you. And then again, depending on how busy the network is, then some time will pass, generally 10 minutes. That Bitcoin will then be sort of fully confirmed into their wallet, and then they are fully in control of all of that Bitcoin. So again, going back to your initial not your keys, not your coin, not your keys, not your coins comment, they are now fully in control of the Bitcoin that's within that wallet, because they are holding the private keys to that Bitcoin, that £50 worth of Bitcoin.
Okay.
Nobody can take that off them. As long as they keep those words safe and that phone safe, that's theirs. Essentially, it can't be confiscated.
That sounds easy enough. That sounds easy enough, and like anyone who is concerned about doing this, a little bit scared, like I was, definitely was scared about doing this the first time I did it, and luckily I had someone holding my hand and talking me through it. But essentially, all you're saying is that you download an app, you write down 12 to 24 words, you go on to CoinFloor if you bought from them, and you copy and paste an address like an email address, you press send, and there you are. You now control your Bitcoin. You now have full access, and no one else can mess with it. And how long did that take? 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, you'll see the transaction almost instantly. Then you just need to wait for a confirmation, basically, which is the network confirming that it's a real transaction. It agrees with all of the rules of the network, and then, like I say, then that's your Bitcoin, and enjoy.
That's brilliant. So you're now in full control of your Bitcoin, and what does that mean then? So you have £50 in your wallet. How's that different to keeping that money or keeping that Bitcoin on an exchange? What does that mean to the user?
So essentially, if you've got Bitcoin on an exchange, all you've got is an IOU. Uh, you've got £50 worth of IOU on the CoinFloor account. Essentially, CoinFloor are fully in control of that Bitcoin at that point. Again, I don't want to paint CoinFloor in a bad light here. I'm just talking about exchanges in general.
No, I agree with you. Any exchange, the best thing is to take your money off an exchange, because although CoinFloor are fantastic and I would trust them more than most exchanges, the whole point in this system is that you don't have to trust anyone. And that is how it is different to the traditional system. So if you're going to use Bitcoin properly, you should hold your own keys. That is best practice.
Yeah, and just to add a bit more weight to that, obviously, they're becoming less and less apparent, but in the past there has been exchange hacks. So if you've got your Bitcoin on an exchange and that exchange is hacked and they get their wallets drained of funds, essentially you've just lost your Bitcoin.
Yeah.
There are no refunds, there are no chargebacks. This is final, and which is again why it's so important that you control your own keys.
Yeah. Okay. So they've got their keys, and so they're now, they don't have to be concerned with an exchange getting hacked, or an exchange. Maybe they're insolvent. Although CoinFloor does their insolvency reports, which I think they are the only exchange that does that, to my knowledge. But still, you just have, you don't have to trust anyone. You have the full control. And does that mean then that now they can send that Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere, anytime? And is there any restriction on it at all?
None whatsoever. So it doesn't matter whether they're sending to their next door neighbour or to somebody on the other side of the planet who's an international dissident who is got a warrant out for their arrest. Again, probably not a good idea, but in terms of the Bitcoin network, there's absolutely nothing stopping them sending to whoever they want, whenever they want, basically.
So they have full control. Again,
absolutely, and I think that's one of the most powerful things. Is obviously there's stories all over the news on a weekly basis now in terms of people getting bank accounts frozen. PayPal is a great example. If you've got a business that PayPal disagree with for any reason whatsoever, they can just seize all your funds. They can stop, and that could mean a business shutting down essentially.
Yeah.
With Bitcoin, you've got none of that. Basically, it's a case of I can pay who I want, I can receive from whoever I want, whenever I want. The only thing I need to consider is a small fee for the network to process my transaction, basically.
That sounds pretty cool. So, what if, say, you wanted to send a transaction? You've got your $50, and you want to send a transaction, and I don't know, someone really powerful, that orange bloke over in the United States who runs their country, if he says, do you know what, number one priority is I don't want this person to be able to for that transaction to continue, I want to stop it. And obviously he could phone any bank, any payment system, PayPal, banking, whatever, he can just stop that. Can he do that with Bitcoin or not? Like, if he's just, that's all he wants to do, can he do it?
No, basically.
Shit
as
out of
long
luck.
as unfortunately for Orange Man, yeah, it is. basically, as long as there is a miner willing to take that transaction fee and to include this person's transaction into a block, there's no stopping it, basically.
Okay.
Obviously, there's some slight nuance around using your own node, which we may come on to later, or perhaps at another time. But essentially, from a network level, no, you wouldn't be able to stop it. Again, which is one of the most powerful things about Bitcoin is its censorship resistance.
Okay.
In the fact that payments can't be stopped.
So there's nothing else like it. That is something that's never existed, as far as I'm aware.
And I think when people actually make that first transaction and they realise that there was no man in the middle, they didn't have to ask for permission, they didn't gain any authority, they didn't have to give up any, they didn't have to provide any ID. Again, a bit of nuance around where you bought the Bitcoin from, but in terms of making that transaction, no ID, no permission, it's completely up to the user.
Okay. And so they've written down these seed words. They now control everything, and now the wallet's popping up, and it's saying something about a passphrase. What's this?
Okay, so just to recap, that the seed words, your 12 or 24 words, again, which number of words it is just depends on the wallet application. They're both very secure methods of storing. So it'll either be 12 or 24 words, as I say. A passphrase is an optional extra word on top of this, which a user can sort of add on as an extra layer of security, basically. So to use an example of the benefits of a passphrase, let's say you write your 24 words down, and I let myself into your house, and I see this bit of paper that's on your desk, and I think, oh, yeah, obviously I know what these 24 words mean. I think, well, I'll have that. I'll pop that into my pocket. I can then go away, restore those seed words into a wallet, another mobile wallet or a desktop wallet, and I could steal all of your funds. And you would, unless you saw me take that piece of paper, you would be none the wiser until you open your app, and boom, all your Bitcoin's gone.
Right.
So where the passphrase comes into this is, again, using that example, I've just nicked your seed words back up, but you've got a passphrase as well as that, which isn't written down. So that could be a common phrase that you can remember, or that you've written down and kept separately on a separate bit of paper, or stamped into a piece of metal, or whatever process you choose. As long as that's separate, with just those 24 words that I've stolen, I can't get access to any of your Bitcoin. I still need that extra word. So as long as you keep these two, your seed and your passphrase stored separately, it's basically an extra layer of security that allows that sort of prevents from theft of your Bitcoin, basically.
That makes sense. It's like you say, it just stops someone from finding those seed words, and having them separate is obviously key, because otherwise, if they find both together and they're both written on the same bit of paper, it's pointless. But the whole point in having the 24 words, from what I can understand, is just that you have the ability to, even if you lose your device or whatever happens, you can always restore on another device or in another wallet. No matter where you are in the world, you always have access to that Bitcoin. It effectively is everywhere. But it's good to have that passphrase as just an extra bit of security, because you do have to write the stuff down, unless you have a good enough memory and you trust yourself to remember those words.
Yeah, I probably would never advocate for that.
Me neither.
I've read some absolute horror stories on Twitter and whatnot. Whether there's any truth in them, nobody knows. But yeah, please don't try and memorize your 12 or 24 words. It's a brave idea.
I don't even remember what day it is half the time, so I'm not going to be trying it.
I know how you feel.
All right, so we've now got the Bitcoin on there. It's secure. They've got their 24 words. They've also got a passphrase. They've kept the passphrase separate to the seed words. Now, The other thing that we need to talk about is private keys. Everyone getting into Bitcoin is always going to be asking, it's always talked about, it's private keys and public keys and all these different keys. But all we've talked about so far is a wallet. And I don't keep my keys in my wallet. I keep them on a keychain. So what are these keys about?
Yeah, so these keys, when you make a transaction using your wallet, these keys are what's used to sign the transaction and to prove that you are the owner of the Bitcoin that you're trying to spend. From a user perspective, you will almost, unless you're an advanced user, you will never interact directly with a private key. That's all been sort of hidden in the background under a fancy user interface that's created by whoever made this mobile wallet or desktop wallet. Mm-hmm. But essentially, these are the private keys are sort of like a child of your seed words. The seed words are all that you will likely interact with in terms of the wallet, and the private keys, like I say, are obfuscated away from you. Basically, that's what your wallet will use to say, yeah, I own this Bitcoin. Here's the proof. I'm going to send it to this person, and here's the private key.
Okay, it's kind of like an ID, effectively.
Yeah, it's proof of ownership, and proof to the network that the Bitcoin that I'm trying to spend, I own it, and it abides by the rules of the network, and it's okay to spend.
Okay, and without that key, you don't have access. So it's like an ID or a key that only that grants you access to that Bitcoin, and without that, no chance.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, it's most users, unless you really go looking for it, you'll never see an actual private key. It's all managed away from the user, really, mm-hmm. Which I think is a good thing because it makes
it safer.
It makes dealing with everything so much easier. Yeah, and you're much less likely to knacker something up.
Well, yeah. So presumably, if somebody who gained access or they could see the private key, then they can gain access to the Bitcoin. So it's best that it is not shown unless you're an advanced user, basically.
Yeah. It's and your wallet doesn't just have one private key. It has, it's capable of generating thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Mm-hmm. But again, the user will never see that. It's all done for them.
Okay. And so what's the difference between a private key and a public key?
So again, the public keys generally are sort of obfuscated away from the user. A private key and a public key are sort of are paired together. One is, to keep it as simple as possible, one is used to sign a transaction, which is the private key, and the public key is the pair, which is shared. When the transaction takes place, the public key is shared to say, from this public key, here's the corresponding private key. I own both. This is my Bitcoin. I'm allowed to spend it to this person. But again, the user will not see this. It's all sort of put behind a shiny UX.
Okay. And are there any other type of keys that we need to know about?
Unfortunately, yes, just to confuse matters. There's what's known as an extended public key.
Okay.
Now, the likelihood is of all of the keys that are in a wallet, this is the one a user might interact with.
Right.
So an extended public key, a lot of people might hear them called expubs. This is essentially the master view into your wallet. It allow anybody with this expub or extended public key can see all of the addresses within a wallet. It can't spend from them, but it can see them all. So this might be useful if for services where a user might need to generate more than one address in one. They might share their extended public key. Now there are some privacy considerations in doing so. Like I say, if you were to share your wallet's expub with me, Although I could never ever steal any of your Bitcoin, I could sit there, I could load it into a wallet and watch any transaction that you ever made with that wallet. So again, just to reiterate, I couldn't steal any of that Bitcoin, but I could see all of your transactions. Now, obviously, that might not be desirable depending on who you're transacting with and the nature of what the nature of your spends and receives. So, take-home message is just be mindful who you share your export with.
Okay, so that makes sense. So we want to keep our seed words to ourselves. We want to keep our passphrase to ourselves, and we want to keep those two separately. We want to keep our keys to ourselves, except for potentially an XPub key, and then you have to just be mindful about who you are sharing that information with, because if you share that key with them, it's like giving a key to the door to a partner or a friend or family. Just know that they can walk in and they can see all the shit in your house. So it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, exactly. And just to reiterate, because I know there's a lot of talk of keys here, is that private keys, public keys, and extended public keys, 99% of people that are just using Bitcoin just to transact, they're not going to need to directly interact with any of them. Just focus on those seed words.
Okay.
And keeping those safe.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. And so you talked earlier about we're taking our Bitcoin off an exchange and we're sending it to our wallet, which we control. Now, and I said, oh, it sounds a bit like a email address. What is that? Is that called an address? And if so, what are these addresses and how are they made?
Yeah, so like I say, when you create your wallet, you get your seed words, which we've talked about, and from those seed words, your wallet is capable of generating all of the keys that we've just talked about, and then from those keys, it can then generate addresses. So an address is, again, one of the few things that we've spoken about so far that a user will interact with directly. So you can think of this as a destination where you would send some Bitcoin to, basically. Your wallet can produce an almost infinite number of addresses, and it's a very good idea to never use the same one twice. Now, again, that sounds a bit cumbersome to worry about that, but again, all of the wallets, the popular wallets now, if I was to send you some Bitcoin, it would be to the address that you shared with me, and once your wallet is received to that first address, it will then hide that address from your view. You'll still be able to see all the Bitcoin that was sent to it. You won't be able to easily receive to that address again. It'll just be hidden away from you. And then the next time that you want to receive, next time you hit receive on that app, it'll just show you a completely brand new address.
Okay.
And all of these addresses that are generated, they're all still within the same wallet. And generally the wallet will show you the total balance of all of the Bitcoin stored against any of the addresses within that wallet.
Okay, that makes sense. And that's just for privacy, is it?
It is, yes. So address reuse, as it's commonly referred to, is using an address to receive Bitcoin in more than one transaction. That's generally seen as a bad idea for privacy, like I say, because if I was to send you 1,000,000 sats, and then so obviously I know one of your addresses because I've just sent that Bitcoin to you. Now, if you were to just repeatedly use that over and over again, because I know that address, I could in theory watch that address on using what's known as a block explorer, which is basically like a directory. I can punch your that wallet address in that I know, and I could watch any transactions in or out from that single address.
Right.
So I would know if you use that address to send from or to receive to again, I would know, oh look, Max has received another 2,000,000 sats to that address.
Okay.
So again, I generally wouldn't know who sent it to you or who you're sending to, but it might be a privacy consideration that it's not a good idea for me to know that information about you.
Okay. Yeah, well, that makes sense. And The only concern that I guess some people might have there is, so obviously, let's say that you've sent me £10 worth of Bitcoin and I've received that and it's lovely. And then my wallet has now made me a new address for the next person who's sending me some money. What if you felt really generous and you were like, do you know what? I want to send him another £5. So you send another £5 to the address that you previously had because I haven't given you a new one. You just thought, I'm just going to do it to be nice. Now, that still goes into their same wallet, does it?
Absolutely, and you would still see it if you opened your app after I'd made the second transaction. You'd see the correct balance of both, of the combined balance of both transactions.
That's good. Okay.
And I could do that as many times as I wanted to, and it would all go to you.
Yeah.
Nobody, like you say, nobody takes that address away from you. It's just not a good idea to use it multiple times.
Yeah.
These addresses they're free, they're almost infinite. So it makes sense to never use the same one twice.
Okay, but they don't have to worry about those funds being lost because they've got a new address. It's all generated from the same wallet.
Yeah, it all comes back to that seed phrase. As long as you've got that seed phrase, you've got custody of your Bitcoin.
Perfect. Okay, that makes sense. So they've got their mobile wallet, which I think I absolutely agree with you is the easiest way to start for anybody. Now, I understand that there are going to be different types of wallets depending on what you want from it and also how much Bitcoin you have. So could you talk through the different types of wallets and why you might use them?
Yeah, so obviously we've covered at length mobile wallets, and we've also got desktop wallets, which is essentially exactly the same as everything that we've just spoken about, except it's one that runs on your computer basically. So they'll generally have all of the same functionality. It's just purely the fact that it sits on your computer. One word of caution: obviously, computers are inherently virus prone, shall we say. So I would be wary about storing large amounts of Bitcoin solely on a computer,
Especially if it's
desktop
Windows.
wallet. Exactly, yeah. Please don't use Windows. And if you do use Windows, please don't use a desktop wallet.
Yeah.
So moving on then, okay, the next thing that people will probably come across is hardware wallets. So a hardware wallet, again, it has all of the same functionality as that we've spoken about, except it's the C phrase and all of the subsequent keys that we've spoken about are stored on a dedicated device. Generally speaking, these will look something like a USB drive, although some of them look a little bit like calculators these days in the case of a cold card. And this device has got one sole purpose, and that is to keep your seed phrase and your keys safe and secure on a device that is doesn't have any, it doesn't have solitaire on it, or it doesn't have an internet connection that might allow in some malicious software, which could essentially steal your Bitcoin. So they're a focused piece of kit that has one sole purpose, and that's again keeping that Bitcoin safe. Now, obviously, there's lots of different types of these. Some of them actually still connect to a computer via a USB cable. Some of them interact with computers via micro SD cards, and some of them now interact with mobile phones via Bluetooth. Again, so they've all got different pros and cons, but they all have the same sole purpose of being a dedicated device aimed at securing keys.
Okay.
So, sorry, go on, Max.
No, I was just going to say, so what we've done up till this point is we've gone really down the sort of basic route of someone who's just started with Bitcoin. And I think most people who are starting with a small amount of Bitcoin, starting with a phone wallet is more than good enough, and a desktop wallet, as long as you're not using Microsoft, again, is more than acceptable. But we're now talking about these hardware wallets, and for some of the listeners who maybe they've already got the phone wallet, and maybe they have now done some more digging and they've looked at your website or they've listened to the podcast and they've invested a little bit more, and they're thinking about looking at a hardware wallet. Do you have any suggestions, if we just dig a little bit deeper, on the different types of hardware wallets and the pros and cons?
Yeah, sure. So this can be a bit of a minefield.
Yeah.
The kind of de facto go-to hardware wallets for most new users will be Ledger or Trezor. And these, like I say, they're USB-ish looking devices. Trezor interacts with what's known as a web wallet, which I'm not a huge fan of, which is basically I've never actually used one, so I apologise if I completely butcher this. But it's a website that you visit in your internet browser. You plug the Trezor into your computer, and then it allows you to do all of the things that we've spoken about. So construct transactions, receive, etc., via your computer. And then when it comes to if you want to spend, you hit a couple of buttons on the Trezor or the Ledger. And that's to basically say, look, I'm authorizing this transaction, which is where the extra security comes in, is that you need that device to make that transaction.
Right.
Without that device, you wouldn't be able to make that spend. And I suppose that's where, the extra security comes in. And it's that little bit of extra peace of mind that, somebody would have to steal this USB looking device from wherever you're keeping it,
right,
to make a transaction with your Bitcoin.
Okay.
So, and then we move slightly up the scale, where you move into the realms of cold card. So this was the one I was referring to earlier. It looks a little bit like a calculator. This is actually the one that I use, and the one that I would recommend most people use, although it does have a little bit of a steeper learning curve.
Yeah.
It's designed to be never plugged into your computer, which is where it differentiates itself from the Ledger and the Trezor. It essentially works by generating your seed phrase and your keys completely offline. All you do is plug it into a power source. You can then set the wallet up. You can generate everything on a device that has never been connected to anything else ever, which is where it sort of it gains its extra additional bit of security, really, because essentially, if your computer is malware infected, and then you go and connect your hardware wallet to it, that there's a slight potential there that malicious software could leak its way into the hardware wallet. Again, there hasn't been that many reports on this, but that extra air gap is what it's known that the cold card uses, basically where there's air around it. It's never connected to anything. It just prevents that attack surface. So the way the cold card works is, again, you sort of you create your transaction using a desktop wallet. Most people use Electrum, which again has all of the features that we've just spoken about, but it sits on your desktop. Key thing to note is that the keys, the private keys that are authorized to spend, are still on that cold card. So you can do whatever you like in Electrum, but until you've authorized the transaction on your cold card, nobody can spend that Bitcoin.
Right.
So a quick rundown of a cold card transaction. Like I say, you would open Electrum, your desktop wallet. You would say, I want to spend to this address. I want to send max £10. So that would create the transaction, which is known as an unsigned transaction, which is basically it's the bare bones of a transaction. It says, I want to send this from this address to Max. This is the amount. This is the fee that I want to make. You can then save that to the SD card, pop that out of your computer, pop it into the cold card. You can then review your transaction and press OK to authorize it. Pop the SD card back out of your cold card. Again, it's still not been connected to anything at all apart from power. You can then pop the SD card back into your computer, and then the transaction, which has now been signed and authorized by the cold card, can then be picked up by the desktop wallet and then sent out to the Bitcoin network and be made. And you would then receive your £10 worth of Bitcoin. And I would be safe in the fact of knowing that I just signed that transaction with a device that's never touched anything other than a power source.
Yeah, so it sounds like the safe way of doing things from everything you've described from the beginning till now is to keep things in compartments away from each other. So you're not allowing your device that signs the transactions to touch the internet, and it's only actually touching your computer through this SD card, and that your seed phrase is separate to your 24 word, or everything is kept separate. So if someone finds one thing, they can't access your money, rather than it's all in one area, like your phone, for example, and you got your password written on a scrap of paper at the back of it. Then they have access to everything. But from what you've described, even if someone got hold of your phone and they got hold of your computer, they still can't access anything. And even if they then got your passphrase but not your 24 words, or your 24 words but not your passphrase, they still can't access anything. And until they get hold of your calculator looking cold card that you may have hidden somewhere off site, they still can't access anything.
Exactly. And like I say, these hardware wallets have sort of local protections as well. So they've all got PIN codes on them as well. So even with physical access, an attacker would still need to break into the device and get access that way. So, you could essentially, again, I'm not advocating for this, but you could leave your cold card with your private keys on it on top of your desk, and essentially it'd be a very, very, very costly attack to try and steal the Bitcoin. You were talking hundreds of thousands of pounds to try and crack that.
And presumably expert knowledge and specialized hardware.
Exactly, yeah. Your layman is not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Not without significant funds and help.
Yeah, and they could probably do all of that, spend all that money, and then they find that there's 30 quid on it.
Exactly. Yeah. There's no way of telling whether it's actually worth it until you've spent all the money up front and gone through the rigmarole of trying to crack it. One thing I will add to this is that it sounds like there's a lot of process here and a lot of steps for people to take. And one thing that I would want to sort of reiterate is the fact that this is one of the, not drawbacks, but one of the pills that people will have to swallow in terms of taking control of their own funds. These extra layers of security that we're touching on here, that these are the steps that you have to take to essentially, I'm not a fan of the term, but it describes it quite well, of be your own bank, basically. This is the trade-off that comes with having a money that comes with no trusted third parties. Again, you are the sole proprietor and controller of that Bitcoin, and there are certain steps that people need to take that we've discussed here that to ensure the security of their Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, is that, yeah, it does sound like it's a bit of a pain in the arse, and that it does sound like there are some steps that you have to go through, and there is a bit of a steep learning curve. But it does give you so much power, it gives you so much control that is just not possible with any other system on the planet. And to get that much power, you sometimes you have to go through a little bit of hardship. And really, it might sound complicated, but once you start digging in, it really isn't that hard. Most of these things are pretty simple to use. The user experience from most of these mobile wallets and most of the hardware wallets that I've used has been brilliant. And if someone just gives it a go, most of the time it will be easy. They won't have any problems. But if they do have problems, there's so many people that you can ask, and there's so many different resources where you can dig through that you're not going to be left without getting it resolved.
Definitely not. No, that's one thing I will add is that since I've started interacting more on Twitter and especially Telegram, is that there's so many people out there that are willing to spend their own time to help out and to walk you through, literally hold your hand in doing anything. I would urge anybody who's struggling to go out there, reach out and just ask for support. There's a wealth of knowledge out there, and people are all too happy to support.
Absolutely. I mean, personally on the show, I keep my my DMs open. I keep my email open. If anyone has any questions at all, just ask. And it looks like it's the same for you on your website. If anyone has any questions you haven't asked us, a question at the top right as well. So if anyone has questions, are they welcome to ask?
Of course, yeah. Feel free, grab me Telegram, Twitter, or again, follow, like you just said, follow the email link that's at the top of the site. I'm more than happy to help out. Like I said, at the start of the show, it wasn't all that long ago that I was the confused newcomer. So I know exactly what it feels like, and hence that's why I'm trying to sort of share as much of the basic knowledge. I'm by no means an expert, and I'm still learning every day. But I'm just trying to put out the simple stuff that confuses most people coming into the space, really.
No, it's brilliant. And like I said before, you're doing a great job of it. And I think just even with our conversation today, we've gone through to a point where someone now controls their keys. They have the option of using a phone wallet, one on their computer, or a hardware wallet. We've gone through what are the best hardware wallets. And I agree with you, Coldcard to me seems like by far the best. And they're already now at a stage where they are so much more secure than almost any other system. They have more control than you can get with anything else on the planet. And realistically, they can do this in what, half a day from start to finish, even if they're not particularly techy.
Oh, easy,
Yeah.
easily, yeah. Like I say, the on ramps are getting easier. Unfortunately, not so much the KYC ones, although they are the non KYC ones, should I say?
Yeah.
Although they are coming on, but you could go from zero to controlling your own keys and having 50 quid's worth of, or even 10 quid's worth of Bitcoin in your own wallet in a couple of hours easily.
That's amazing.
And I think I would urge people to do that, and like I say, even if it's just a couple of quid, is do that and make that first transaction, because it kind of all clicks together a little bit when you see it happening in front of your eyes, and that's when you kind of you get hooked, and you start to see the power of what this network can do, and then you want to dig deeper really and understand the more technical stuff.
Yeah. So for the people who are listening and maybe they've already done the things that we've talked about, maybe they've already taken those steps, there are a couple of other options. Can you talk me through the other options, like a multi-sig, and what's the difference between a custodial wallet and a non-custodial wallet, and some of the other differences for people who have already got to the stage we have discussed up to this point?
Okay, so yeah, I'll cover off the custodial ones first because we've kind of already covered that. So a custodial wallet is essentially the coin floor situation that we spoke about earlier. So you've bought £10 worth of Bitcoin. It's sat on that exchange. So essentially, you've bought that Bitcoin, but you're not the custodian of it. Coin floor is. Mm-hmm. Now, on the flip side of that, a non-custodial wallet is the second bit that we described. So that is, you've downloaded your mobile wallet and you've withdrawn that Bitcoin off the exchange into a wallet where you control the private keys, seed phrase, or all of the keys that we've spoken about. So that is a non-custodial wallet, and that is where I would urge everybody who's listening to this to get to, is to use that wallet where you control the keys. And if you're not sure which one you've got, just ask yourself the question, have I written down my seed words? If you haven't, the likelihood is that you have a custodial wallet and you are not in control of those keys. But if you did and you've got that stored safe, then you have a non-custodial wallet and you are, in my opinion, using Bitcoin the right way, the way as intended. Moving on to, you mentioned multi-sig earlier. This is not something that I would recommend for most new users. Again, we spoke earlier about keys, private keys. So a multi-sig wallet is basically a number of wallets sort of clustered together. So multi-sig can take many shapes and sizes. So the most common one, I suppose, is what's known as a 2 of 3. So what that means is there are 3 wallets participating collectively to create a single wallet. To spend from that wallet, they would need 2 out of the 3 people signing a transaction, so participating effectively to spend. So again, not applicable for most new users. You know, if you've got, I'd probably say up to a couple of thousand pounds worth of Bitcoin, a single signature wallet like the cold card or the mobile, even the mobile wallet that we touched on earlier, is going to be sufficient. When you start getting into the realms of multi-sig, it comes with a lot more complexity, and obviously with that complexity comes risk, particularly for people who don't know what they're doing. Just to put that into perspective, you know, my Bitcoin stash, so to speak, is not that large, should I say, at all. And I've been in the space for 2 years, and even I wouldn't feel that comfortable creating a multi-sig. I just, where the space is at currently, I feel like it's just adding too much complexity for my situation. And I'm probably more at risk of losing my funds than I am of gaining the extra security that a multi-sig wallet would give me. I suppose I kind of miss one of the main powers of multi-sig. Obviously, if I was to create one for myself, again using the 2 of 3 example, what I could do is, once I've created the wallet, is, let's say I've used 3 hardware wallets, I could store them in 3 completely separate locations, in 3 separate corners of the globe if I wanted to. And obviously, if an attacker wanted to steal my Bitcoin, they would need to get 2 of those wallets to create a transaction.
Right.
So if I've got one of the 3 stored in London, I've got the second one stored in New York, and the third is in Thailand, then that's going to be a pretty expensive attack for somebody to come and mug me in London, and then fly me all the way out to Thailand to get the second key to create that transaction to steal that Bitcoin. So it does add a lot of extra security, but again, I would warn new users coming in, with that security comes a lot of complexity and added risk, should I say. So for most people, again, single sig is more than secure enough.
Yeah, and there are options out there for multi-sig like Caravan and all these different, and I think Casa and other companies are making things easier. But I agree with you; it's not something I feel comfortable with either. Maybe a little bit further down the line, I'd like to try it, but it's baby steps, isn't it? You know, do something, get comfortable with it, and then reassess once you're comfortable. And don't push yourself too far where you don't feel comfortable, because that's where mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah, completely agree. Like I say, I just don't think the user experience with multi-sig is quite there yet. I think it will be in a couple of years, and it probably will become the standard. But like I say, we're just not there yet. So I'd say tread carefully if you're going to delve into multi-sig right now.
Yeah. So is there anything else for listeners who are sort of set up their wallet or looking to set up their wallet? Anything else you feel they need to know? Anything that they're going to see and not be sure about after this conversation?
Yeah, so obviously if they're creating a transaction, they've gone through the process we've just spoken about, they've got some Bitcoin in their wallet and they want to send that to somebody else. they're going to have to, when they make that transaction, decide on a fee to use. So the fee is compensating some participants in the network known as miners, who are essentially they're the transaction processors. So they're the ones who will receive your fee, process your transaction in a trust-free way to make sure that it gets to your recipient. Now, obviously, the fee network, you can use whatever fee you'd like, from what's known as 1 Satoshi per byte, which is essentially the lowest of the low fee that you want to use, up to the no upper limit, basically. Again, most of the wallets these days will give you an estimation of the fee that you want to use, and it'll say it'll either give it to you in block time, which again is a network term. One block is if you use the average of every 10 minutes. But again, a lot of these wallets now will give you an actual time as well. So it'll say confirmed in 20 minutes for this fee, and then it'll either have a slider or a text box where you can edit to increase that fee or decrease that fee based on how urgent your transaction is. So what I would urge people to say is a lot of people overpay on fees because they're used to going into Starbucks and tapping their card on the machine. It happens instantly and they can walk away with their latte. Obviously, Bitcoin's not accepted at Starbucks, but using the example, if you're just paying a friend back for dinner or something like that, is it really essential that transaction gets there in the next block, so within 10 minutes?
Depends on the friend. Some
Very good
tight
point.
ass.
Very good point.
Yeah.
So all I'd say is if your transaction is not urgent, I would urge you to lower that fee and save yourself some sats, because at the end of the day, the less you pay in fees, the more Bitcoin you're going to be left with after that transaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so the way I've tried to explain it to people before is kind of like the postal service. Like, you're sending your Bitcoin to another address, and you can choose if you go for cheap, but it's going to take a little bit longer. It's going to get there, but it's going to take a little bit longer. Or you go for paying more money and it's next day at a certain time, signed for. It's that kind of idea of like, how important is it that it gets there soon? And I kind of feel for people who aren't involved in Bitcoin, that's the closest I can find, like, as a comparison.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. The one I like to use is I like to call it a fee market. So basically, people are bidding at the same time as you are, by making a transaction and setting their fee. They're bidding to kind of get their transaction ahead of you, so to speak. Obviously, you wouldn't see that as a user perspective, but basically, like in an auction, the more you bid, the more likely you are to be picked to be in the next block and get your transaction confirmed quicker.
Yeah, but no matter how, you were talking about 1 sat per byte. If they do set it at 1 sat per byte, if they're just sending it, say, from their phone wallet, and now they've bought a hardware wallet and they're sending it there, and they're not going to spend that Bitcoin, that's for their savings, and they plan to keep it for 10 years, it doesn't really matter how long it takes, as long as it gets there.
That's where that situation where you just described it is exactly where it pays to be a cheapskate. Like you say, if you're planning to hold that for any number of years, then what's the rush? There's no risk that the transaction's going to get lost. Even if it takes, let's say that the network's really busy, and you do use a low fee. In extreme cases, there may be a time where it may take a day or two. Again, I'm using extremes here. But like you say, the network is built in such a way that transaction will get mined eventually and confirmed. Again, it's just about the market dynamics. The fee you use and how busy the network is. But yeah, if it's going to a hardware wallet, use a low fee, save some sats.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's the difference between that and the postal service is, like you say, it will get there. It's not like you have any worry of it not getting there. You've sent it, it'll get there. It just takes a certain amount of time. Okay. Well, look, I think that's been a really good rundown for people, especially people who are sort of new to getting into Bitcoin. And helps explain all of this stuff, which certainly I found confusing when I first started, and I'm sure lots of people do. So thank you for doing that. But before you go, I would really like to just ask you a couple of questions and dig a little bit deeper about why you're here, because you're on this call with me, you have set up this website, all this stuff that you're researching, all this stuff that you're doing takes an enormous amount of time. And like you said before, you already have a fiat job, you're a busy guy, you've got a puppy. Why do you care so much?
Like I said earlier, I came in for number go up. Again, I'll hold my hands up. I thought, I came into this space thinking I'm going to get rich. This is great. I'm going to be able to retire in 10 years, and etc. 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 And then I got really sort of hooked into the more of the technical aspect, as well as the censorship resistance and the power that it gives to anybody that wants to participate in the network. It doesn't discriminate against anybody. It doesn't censor against anybody. Bitcoin just is, and it's there if you want it, and it doesn't care if you don't want it. Going back to the technical aspect, which is probably the main thing that kind of hooked me in, really, is obviously we've kept it quite basic today, but the more that you scratch, the deeper you want to go, especially if you're into the more technical aspect. It's just a case of trying to understand this thing. There's so many different facets to it, wallets, nodes, CoinJoin, Lightning, and that's all of that sort of stuff is what's got me hooked in trying to wrap my head around it. I suppose that's why I try to be as helpful as I can, because it's a way to help myself better understand the network and how it works. I spend far, far too much time on Telegram, in the MyNode group, in the Samourai chat, trying to help people. And again, I touched on it earlier, I'm by absolutely no means an expert, but one of the things that's helped me learn so much in the last 6 to 12 months is spending time in those groups, and trying to help other people overcome problems and fix issues. And if I didn't know an answer to a question, I make no bones about it. The fact that I would go and search back through the chat to try and find somebody who's had a similar answer, a similar problem, and see if somebody's spoken about a fix to it. And then I just kind of picked stuff up along the way, and I found it kind of addictive, really, in terms of trying to help people. And it felt really good when somebody's having a really head scratching problem with their wallet that they can't fix, and then if I can help them overcome that, it feels good. And I suppose that's what's helped me learn and kept me coming back, really. And it doesn't really show any signs of slowing down. It's a case of, I think we touched on it earlier, the last time we spoke, is it's kind of taken over any free time that I have got, in terms of podcasts, reading about it, sitting on Twitter, sitting on Telegram, helping people out, or now, like you say, doing podcasts. It's I think the technical bit's what kind of gets me in trying to understand that aspect of the network.
Well, it's never ending, isn't it? Like, as soon as you wrap your head around one concept or one idea or one bit of tech, then there is another three pop up. And I think even if you dedicated every waking hour to understanding Bitcoin and everything around it, no one can. That's kind of what keeps it so interesting, is that it is just an infinite rabbit hole, and there's always something new to learn. There's always something where you can get better at one aspect or another. And I've not come across anything else like that in life.
Yeah, and just when you think that you're getting somewhere, somebody will announce a new app or a new improvement proposal or a new scaling solution, and then you're like, right, okay, I've got to go and wrap my head around that now as well. And it's, I suppose, it's like any new emerging technology. It's forever changing on an almost daily basis, really.
And if it continues to do what it's doing, and we continue to see this pace of innovation, what do you think's going to happen? Do you have some sort of thought on what's going to happen in the future? And is it going to become more obvious to more people that this is a better system, or are we just like a small bunch of lunatics who spend our time on this and on Twitter and think it's brilliant, but no one else is ever going to give a shit? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, do you know what? Obviously, there's a lot of people that think it's going to become the world reserve currency in 5 years, and I don't really share that thought process. I think it definitely gains a lot of traction, but I think it takes a lot longer than most people expect. And I think, I think it's going to be a long road. And there's this, for all, I sort of wax lyrical about Bitcoin and how great it is on Twitter and everything like that. There's still lots of things to improve on, particularly from a privacy perspective. And I just think that that's going to take quite a long time to fix before the normies come, so to speak. We're getting there slowly. I say we. I'm not a developer, obviously. I'm just trying to help out with the basics. But there's hundreds of people working on this stuff day in, day out. I'm making great progress, but I just got the feeling that we've got a long way to go. So much like yourself, hoping to just play a small part in that, pushing it forward.
Yeah, I mean that's what we can do is just help others explain the stuff and push it forward. But the people behind the scenes who are working on I'm hopefully a couple of weeks from now going to have Chris Belcher on to talk about CoinSwap and some of these other privacy technologies that are being built. And I don't know about you, but for me, it it just makes me so much more confident when you've got these type of people building this amazing technology. And although it's not something I can do myself, just being part of it along for the ride is just so exciting.
Yeah, completely agree. You mentioned Chris Belcher there, and obviously there's loads of devs and people like the Samourai team and everybody that's developing wallets and etc. And all the node teams. They're the real heroes of bringing this slowly but surely to the masses and making it easier to use, easier to interact with, and more palatable for people who may not even know what Bitcoin is right now.
And I guess the idea is that one day we get to that point where it's all abstracted away and all someone has to do is download an application, press send, and all the privacy and everything else is all just done in the background and they don't even know. And that's where I think mass adoption can really happen. And we are a way off from it, but do you feel we're heading in the right direction?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very optimistic about the future, and interacting with all the people I've just mentioned on a daily basis is what inspires me with confidence to know that hopefully not hopefully I'm confident it will change the world one day. But I'm just wary that there's a lot of hype and number go up crowd on Twitter that think it's going to happen tomorrow. So anybody that I try and bring on board into this, I just try and manage their expectations and be open and honest about the trade-offs and the extra steps that you might have to take compared with what they're used to, and the extra responsibility, everything we've just touched on basically. It's about understanding the risks and that famous word nuance trade-offs.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I much prefer when people take that approach and they are realistic and reasonable about things, because there's no point in hyping people up. I mean, I always do a similar thing. I'll say to people, buy a little bit, learn how to use it, but when are we going to be at a time where there's hyper Bitcoinization and there's all this stuff that we talk about? I don't know. Could be 10 years, could be 20, could be 30. No one really knows, but it's not happening tomorrow. But as long as we're on that path, as long as things continue like they are, to my mind, it is inevitable that it's going to happen at some point, and I believe in my lifetime.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, well, I hope it's in my lifetime. I dedicate a lot of time to learning about it, so I'd like to see it really, really succeed. I think it's already succeeded compared to obviously the origin of the network and where we're at today, and we're sort of it's come such a long way. Obviously, still a long way to go, but I think it is already a success.
Oh, 100%.
Relative to where it started and what the devs have achieved is just astonishing for me.
Awesome. Well, look, it's been amazing having you on. I really hope we can do this again. Obviously, we focused on one thing very specifically, but I think it was really, really helpful, and it will be something that I can point people to and say, look, you want to know about wallets, go here. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for putting up the website and helping newcomers understand this technology better. I truly believe it can change the world. It sounds like you do as well. So it's really important that people like you are there and banging the drum. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to go through?
Yeah, so something that just popped into my head is obviously we've talked a lot about the theory of what a wallet is and what it contains and everything. We haven't actually said, given anybody any recommendations.
Yeah, good point. Well done.
So
You should be doing this instead of me.
so what I will say is first and foremost is I've got a mobile wallet comparison chart on my website. So you should. I'll probably send you the link if you want to include.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Or something like that. And that sort of compares all of the common ones. It compares their features and sort of lists any trade-offs, what they're good at, what they're not so good at. But in terms of practical here and now advice for somebody who can't be bothered to go and look at the website, I would say for the more privacy-focused user, Samourai wallet for me went hands down. They are leaps and bounds above the rest.
I agree.
But for somebody who simply wants absolute pure simplicity and speed of, I just want to get a wallet and I want to hold my own keys, plain and simple. I don't want any bells and whistles. Blue Wallet is also a great option.
Okay.
Really nice, simple UX. But yeah, if I had to pick one, Samourai, hands down.
Okay.
The team there are fantastic, and what they've achieved is awesome. So,
and what
those two would be. Sorry, Max.
No, I was just going to say, as far as I'm aware, Samourai is only on Android and not on iOS. Is that right?
Very good point. Yeah. So if you're an iOS user, I would say go for Blue Wallet.
Okay. So so if you're Android, I don't think it's even a question really. If you're an Android, go and download Samourai. It's brilliant.
Without a doubt.
It's so good, and it's really easy to use as well. I absolutely love that wallet. And you're saying if you're iOS, it would just be Blue Wallet, yeah?
Yeah. It's got the perfect simple UI for new people.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's really easy to use.
Okay, and if you can, well, I've got the link here anyway, so I'll add it into the show notes. And for anyone who is listening, definitely go and check out the website. It's absolutely brilliant, and it goes into wallets and much, much more.
Yeah, appreciate you shilling it, Max, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. All right, and like I said, I hope we do it again. And absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Sure. Thanks, Max.
All right. Cheers. Speak soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.